Okay, Mayank Sharma. You are looking very smart.
Thank you, sir.
Basically, you are looking at the moment.
Yes, sir.
I belong to Dehra.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Schooling is from Himachal.
From Sandhu, sir.
Schooling.
Yes, sir. From Shri.
Which school?
YPS.
My place Morning. Then you have done BTech from Himachal.
Himachal University,
Which
sir.
college?
So it's called UIIT. It's a campus in the university campus itself.
Shimla.
Shimla, sir.
Okay, like they won UIET here also in Shimla.
Yes, sir. Similarly, there is a yes, sir.
So you get selected for this HAS, then for which post you start your service? Starting post क्या होता है?
So, in SDM,
SDM.
yes, sir.
Very nice. So do you know the duty of SDM?
Yes, sir. I have some idea.
Some idea.
Yes, sir.
At least 3-4 duties. Can you tell me?
So first is in the disaster management area, wherein he would coordinate with the district director. So second would be the revenue. He acts as a court in revenue matters. So third is, I would say, the magisterial functions of the magistrate. So these are mentioned under Code of Criminal Procedure also. So these three functions I can recollect right now. So,
Disaster management.
yes.
You have stayed or lived in Dehra.
Yes, sir.
You know on the Dehra locality, no? Hope you are aware of the Dehra.
I am, sir.
There is a river next to Dehra.
Yes, sir.
What is the name of the river?
It's River Bias.
So sometimes there might be a flood also in that river.
Yes.
Has it ever happened earlier?
I am not aware.
Flood-like situation.
Uh,
Flood-like situation.
I'm not aware exactly if it has happened or not.
It might happen.
It might happen.
Or
Yes.
it might have happened. You may not
Yes.
be aware.
Yes, it might happen.
Because this is one of the responsibility for LGM Dehra or even DC Kangra.
Yes.
For that, they are supposed to coordinate with all SDM or Tahsildar.
Yes.
Suppose flood comes in that river,
Yes.
how to save the villages. There are so many villages on the bank of Dehra,
Yes.
on the bank of this Bias river.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, in my opinion, there can be a twofold method. One is the short term and second is the long term. So, the short term, sir, the immediate priority should be to save lives and property. So, sir, it is important that we take those people affected to nearby locations. So, by locations, I would mean that we would be in contact with the department which provides us advices about weather. And if we have an advisory that the flood is approaching, we might make use of the local schools as shelters for those people and ensure that we take the people away towards those schools. And so in that we should have a priority of sequence. For instance, the elderly women, pregnant women should be given preference over adult male. So I think this is the short-term measure. And so the long-term measure should be to create embankments around the flooding areas and ensure that there is no encroachment near to the river area, so that no residential, there is some zoning of the floodplain, so that there is no residential households nearby, maybe around within a radius of 10 kilometers from the river. So I think that would prevent any loss of life and property.
This you are telling me about the execution part.
Yes,
But how will you execute?
yes, I can tell, sir. Sir, it's during the execution, it's important to understand that I am subordinate to the DC, and I have some subordinates under me. So, sir, I have to take instructions from the DC first, and I have to ensure that my subordinates, I have a team of subordinates which are taking care of multiple areas. Maybe one of those areas can be taking care of the first aid. Maybe another team can take care of whom to take. As I mentioned, sir, a team can take specially focus on elders. Another team can specially focus on women. So that is how we try to evacuate those affected from the floods. And so another third team can be which can calculate the amount of losses to the property which have occurred. So I think, in my opinion, creating teams of my subordinates and providing them supervision, and at the same time, as I am a subordinate to the DC, I should coordinate with the DC regularly as to what is the situation on the ground.
You are newly appointed SDM.
Yes, sir.
I said in the beginning, again I am repeating.
Yes, sir.
You have answered what a subordinate, you are superior.
Yes, sir.
The moment you get appointed
Yes, sir.
and you are told that disaster management is one of your duty.
Yes, sir.
Once you have joined the duty, what all you will do? This is a normal weather
Yes, sir.
at this time. There is no chance of flood
Yes, sir.
at the moment, there is no NCM. But once you join the duty, are you supposed to carry out your task?
Sir, in case right now, if we consider right now when there is no flood situation, so in that case, sir, I have a duty, sir. I have to ensure that I am taking care of areas around. As I said, sir, we can create a floodplain zone. So that zone can be created right now when there is no risk of the flood. So I can swear at that operation. Please.
These are theoretical part.
Yes.
After joining
Yes.
SDM chair
Yes, sir.
and disaster management is one of your tasks.
Yes, sir.
First of all, you should check the equipment available for evacuating people.
Yes.
What all equipment are required?
Right.
If you not check that, suppose you have recruited 100 soldiers to fight.
Yes, sir.
So how will they fight?
Using the equipment.
Weapon.
Yes.
If you don't have rifle,
Yes, sir.
how will they fight?
Uh,
Similarly,
Yes, sir.
what all equipment are required for rescuing the people? You should know
Yes, sir.
what all items are required.
So in case of flood management.
Yeah. How? Suppose this is the river,
Yes, sir.
other side there is one village,
Yes, sir.
there is no road. Now we have to due to flood, we have to evacuate the people from the other side.
Yes.
How will I evacuate? We have to bring them this side. Then from on the road, we take them to nearest shelter area,
Yes, sir.
school, whatever it is.
Yes, sir.
Or somebody is sick.
Yes.
What action I will do? I am asking this question.
Sir, in my humble opinion, I think services of state disaster response force must be taken because it's a specialized activity. So in that case, their services can be taken and they are well versed with the action of how to evacuate people. So I'll be coordinating with SDRF in that case. So because it's specialized activities, so my task is to take the decision of ensuring that SDRF is available and these number of battalions are required. And so taking that decision, I have to communicate also to the district collector that this is what we are doing on the ground. And so the specialized activity can be taken care of by the SDRF itself. And so also I should ensure that there are ample number of this transport facility available so that whoever is evacuated is being transported immediately. And so also I would ensure that I am constantly myself personally in touch with the hospital administration nearby, so that if any mishappening or any injuries are reported, I am ensuring that they are being taken to the hospital nearby.
The thing is, before you take the person to hospital,
Yes, sir.
there are some more action required. For that, you require boots, ropes,
Yes.
lighting. So you have to evacuate people in the night time.
Yes, sir.
Let's come in the night.
Yes.
तो उसमें चाहिए निकालना पड़ेगा उनको।
Yes, yes.
तो आप उससे इक्विपमेंट चाहिए, ये मैं जानने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ। इसके लिए ऑलरेडी एट स्मॉल और लोअर लेवल इक्विपमेंट्स आर प्लेस्ड केप्ट
Okay, sir.
होता है सर।
Okay.
ठीक है, ये पता होना चाहिए आपको। ये जैसे बोट नाव वगैरह ना,
Yes, sir.
ये सेंट्रली पैसेज के रखा होता है, स्टोर किया होता है।
Right.
उसके लिए गांव एट विलेज लेवल और सरपंच लेवल, these things are stored in that area जहाँ होता है flood prone area।
Right.
उसके लिए फंड आता है, उस फंड से पैसे पहले खर्च करके ये सामान रखा हुआ है। डिसीज आपको आज अचानक मालूम पड़ेगा, पहले सामान नहीं लिया है तो आप बताए गवर्नमेंट प्रोसेस में सामान लेने बहुत लंबा होता है प्रोसेस।
हाँ जी।
पहले उसका कोटेशन होगा, टेंडर होगा, सामान लेंगे, इंस्पेक्शन होगा, तो बहुत टाइम लगेगा, तो फ्लड निकल जाएगा।
Yes, sir.
इसलिए डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट टीम जो हर जगह नहीं होती है, SDRF रेडी लेवल जोड़ी नहीं आती है,
Yes, sir.
बिफोर दे रीच आपने एक्शन लेना है
Yes, sir.
फटाफट।
Yes.
ये तो बोलेंगे, आप तो बोलोगे साहब मैं तो वेट मैंने मैसेज दे दिया भाई मेरे को, तो 100 बंदे बह गए पानी में, फिर आपको जवाब देना पड़ेगा कि आपने क्या किया। इसलिए एट लोअर लेवल दिस इक्विपमेंट्स आर ऑलरेडी कैटर्ड रखा होता है। तो जब आप एयरस्ट्रीम की ड्यूटी रन करेंगे तो आपका ड्यूटी है भैया एक कल को आगे फ्लड तो पहले आप इंस्पेक्ट करेंगे उसकी सर्विसिबिलिटी कि जो रोप है कहीं टूटा फूटा गलवा तो नहीं है, नाव है ठीक है कि नहीं, सर्च लाइट है रात में लगाएंगे, ऊंचा पोल गाड़ेंगे, पोल चाहिए, लाइट चाहिए, तार चाहिए, कहाँ से इसका बिजली मिलेगा, अगर कोई लाइट नहीं है जनरेटर चाहिए, जनरेटर लगाएंगे उसको निकालेंगे बंदों को। तो ये चीज़ें आपने एज ए चेक करना है और जो आदमी इसका इंचार्ज है स्टोर में रखा हुआ है उसको बोलना है कि मैं कल आ रहा हूँ प्लीज डिस्प्ले हर चीज़ एज पर द लेजर। लेजर में जब कुछ सामान गवर्नमेंट की बची होती है तो उसको बनता है CRB सर्टिफाइड डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर, एक लेजर होता है, लेजर में चेक करो कि 10 रोप है, 10 रोप खरीदा था लास्ट ईयर, अभी 10 है कि नहीं, 5 गुम हो गया होगा, तो एक गाँव चला गया होगा बंदा कुछ और काम यूज कर रहा होगा, तो आपने चेक नहीं करना कि कार्ड में 10 है वहाँ 5 ही है, कहाँ पे 5 वो भी नहीं सर, द पर्सन विल गेट सैलरी टू स्टोर ऑल दिस थिंग।
राइट सर,
ये करना है, ग्राउंड लेवल का काम ज़्यादा होता है।
यस सर,
रिटर्न तो इजी है,
यस सर,
ठीक है,
Yes.
एक एसओपी बना होगा स्टैंडिंग ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर पढ़ के ग्राउंड पे काम करना ज़्यादा जरूरी है इन चीज़ों के लिए,
राइट
चेक करना है कि नहीं, देन यू हैव टू बी इन कॉन्टैक्ट विद देम, उसका मोबाइल नंबर आपको होना चाहिए, जो स्टोर कीपर है उसके जो बंदे डिटेल्ड हैं उनका होना चाहिए। देखो फ्लड में वो टाइम थोड़ा लगता है,
राइट सर,
अभी आपने सुना ऋषि गंगा में आया फ्लड फ्लड,
यस
तो उसमें अगर बात करते रहेंगे इश्तेहार बनाओ तो उनका छुपा होगा, लेकिन वहाँ ऑन ग्राउंड जो इक्विपमेंट है बंदे हैं तो एटलीस्ट जहाँ पर 25 आदमी बहन थे
यस
वहाँ हो सकता है कि 20 को बचा दें,
राइट
तो इमीडिएट एक्शन जो सामान चाहिए होना चाहिए अवेलेबल, खुद चेक करना इंश्योर करना इसलिए आपकी जिम्मेवारी है,
राइट
पता होना चाहिए ना।
ओके राइट मयंक, आप लीगल बैकग्राउंड से हैं, फैमिली फ्रॉम लीगल बैकग्राउंड, आप भी एज ए लॉयर एज ए एडवोकेट प्रैक्टिस करते हैं,
यस
एंड कितना टाइम आपने प्रैक्टिस किया एज ए लॉयर?
so it's been almost 3 years now.
3 ईयर, कहाँ पे किया?
So Himachal Shimla.
तो एज ए एडवोकेट लॉयर इज ए नाइस एंड गुड प्रोफेशन।
Yes, it is.
व्हाई डू नॉट कंटिन्यू? आपका फैमिली का प्रोफेशन भी है, आपके फादर भी आपने देखा है कि सीनियर एडवोकेट हैं,
Yes.
तो इट्स ऑलरेडी अ वेल एस्टैब्लिश्ड प्रोफेशन आपका ऑलमोस्ट है।
Yes.
व्हाई डू वांट टू गो फॉर सिविल सर्विस?
So civil services offers me an opportunity to work in diverse areas of administrative activity and offers me a wider canvas of public-oriented welfare. So I think so this is one of my prominent reasons that I'm opting for civil service as a career.
अगर आप वेलफेयर की बात करते हैं तो डिस्ट्रिक्ट का लीगल सर्विसेज है वहाँ पे अवेलेबल होता है, जहाँ पे जो नीडी लोग हैं, जहाँ ऐसे वहाँ पे स्टेट गवर्नमेंट फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट लीगल सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड करती है, तो ये वेलफेयर तो आप वहाँ पे भी कर सकते हैं। सिविल सर्विस में आप कैसे अलग करेंगे?
So in fact, if I may mention, sir, I am also a part of the legal services department, and sir, I also carry out some pro bono legal activities, working for the underprivileged litigants. That is what I do. But sir, I felt that the canvas is a bit narrow compared to what civil services offer. And sir, law as a profession is not always public oriented, sir.
क्या व्हाट डू यू फील कि सिविल सर्विस में आपको क्या चीज़ें ओपन मिल जाएंगी जो अभी आप इसमें यहाँ पे नहीं कर सकते हैं? टॉकिंग अबाउट द नैरो है वहाँ।
Yes, sir. So multiple areas may to work in various areas of administrative activities and offers an opportunity. I can work for specifically for women in the women departments, for SC, ST, OBCs in the welfare departments of the state. So I can contribute towards the, for instance, the economic planning, so which would also in a way help the most privileged, underprivileged sections of the society. Sir. If I am to the policing branch, sir, I can ensure that there is proper law and order in the states. So that is also.
Could you tell me the name of some particular policy or scheme that has been launched by the Himachal government for the women welfare?
Yes, sir. One of those is Beti and Modi Yojana.
Beti
hai Anmol Yojana.
We right.
Yes.
Beti hai Anmol Yojana.
Yes.
So what is provided in this scheme?
So I'm not able to recollect the specifics, But sir, it somewhere concurs with the Government of India scheme of Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So that is the intent behind this scheme. And we have to ensure that there is women education also and protection of the girls' child also.
Next thing, you want to work for the welfare of SC and ST population in Himachal Pradesh. What is the population percentage of SC and ST in the Himachal population?
So we're not well versed with the facts right now. But so there are 3 prominent districts in the state.
Pre लिखा है, means लिखा है, तो ये हिमाचल का basic तो आपने पढ़ा होगा.
It's not able to declare and read the facts. But so, what I'm very sure of is aware of is that there are 3 prominent districts in the state which house tribal populations, and it offers a good opportunity to work in the area of tribal administration.
Name that district.
So one is Lahaul Spiti, so one is Kinnaur, and one is Chamba.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, you're talking about Lahaul and Spiti and वहाँ पे काफी tribal population है वहाँ.
Yes sir.
अगर हम लाहौल स्पीति में देखते हैं तो ज़्यादातर वहाँ पे बुद्धिस्ट रिलीजन जो है वो प्रोमिनेंट रिलीजन दिखा है.
Yes sir.
लेकिन अगर हम इस तरफ कुल्लू या बाकी का हिमाचल देखते हैं तो यहाँ पे बुद्धिज्म इतना ज़्यादा नहीं, प्रोमिनेंट रिलीजन की फॉर्म में नहीं देखने को मिलता.
Yes.
व्हाट वाज द रीज़न कि लाहौल स्पीति में बुद्धिज्म बहुत ज़्यादा स्प्रेड हुआ और बाकी हिमाचल में नहीं?
So it is traced back to the 7th, 8th century when we talk about Tantric Buddhism. So there were certain gurus of Tantric Buddhism. For instance, Padmanabha. So he traversed from towards Tibet, from the areas of Lahaul and Spiti, which are in proximity to Tibet. So this is how it has actually spread. And so the idea of Tantric Buddhism is also a very prominent facet of Tibetan culture and society. So being in proximity to that area, so perhaps Lahaul and Spiti has a higher population of Buddhist followers.
Name some prominent monasteries of Lahaul and Spiti.
So one is Tabo, so second is Ki Monastery, so third is Dhankar Monastery.
Right. Tell me something about Tabo Monastery.
So Tabo is called the Ellora of the Himalayas city, and so and a very old monastery. So since the area had links with Tibetans, so it was created by a Tibetan, established by a Tibetan king himself. Ye Yashoshat was the name of the king. So it was established by him, and it is a very sacred place for Buddhism throughout the country. And in fact, I would say even across the borders of India, because the Buddhism has a huge spread in Eastern Asian economies also.
Could you tell me something about the architecture of this particular monastery? Architecture के बारे में.
So it's probably a rocket architecture form of architecture. Not able to declare it.
Probably or sure?
Not really sure, sir. Not really sure.
Yes. What are the optional paper in optional subject in means? आपके optional क्या रहेगा means?
Laws.
Law.
Yes.
Right. तो अभी रिसेंटली हिमाचल गवर्नमेंट ने पहले होता था तिब्बत में लाहौल स्पीति में होता था कि जो प्रॉपर्टी होती थी वहाँ पे जो बुद्धिस्ट फैमिली में जो बड़ा बेटा होता था उसको दे दी जाती थी. तो बाकी के जो होते थे ब्रदर्स होते थे उनको प्रॉपर्टी नहीं दी जाती थी. माइट बी अवेयर अबाउट दिस पर्टिकुलर लॉ. तो रिसेंटली हरियाणा जो हिमाचल गवर्नमेंट है उन्होंने इसको चेंज किया कि जितने भी लड़के हैं उनमें इक्वली डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया जाएगा. तो कैसे देखते हैं आप इस लॉ को? आपको लगता है कि ये अच्छा है या गलत है? क्या कैसे नजरिए आपका इसके ऊपर?
So in my humble opinion, it's a good piece of legislation. So specifically because our constitution talks about right to parity in Article 14. So I think rather than creating such class distinctions of giving property to the elder son, I think the rule of equality should be followed, and this is how it should be done, in my opinions.
Right. What is the significance of Balraj? Balraj pass.
So
It is a pass, after crossing the Kelan,
yes.
and you see the first pass, that is the Balraj. So what is the significance of that pass?
So not exactly aware of the significance, but sir, in my opinion, I think sir, it has some strategic dimensions given the fact that we have China as a neighbor. So I think sir, it has some strategic dimension to it.
China तो ले में बैठा हुआ है, बालाराज का इस दिन का हिमाचल प्रदेश.
So I'm not aware sir exactly as to what is the significance of it.
There are two rivers, Chandra and Bhaga,
Yes.
and basically originate from Balaraj glacier, and they meet a place called Tandi. Tandi से मिलके आगे जो चनाब बनती है.
I have read about it, sir.
So that was the one of the significance of Bharat service. Just giving the उसका जो source है वहाँ पे मिलता है उसको.
Right, sir.
रीडिंग का शौक रखते हैं आप?
Yes, sir.
क्या पढ़ते हैं?
It's a non-fiction books.
Non-fiction.
Yes, sir.
Like कोई recent book पढ़ी है?
So I read 21 lessons for 21st century by Retd.
कोई खास favorite author आपका?
Not really, sir. I read on diverse non-fiction areas, and whichever books I find good, I tend to read those. Nothing specific about any authors.
Newspaper भी पढ़ते हैं?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. What is the GDP growth of the Himachal Pradesh as per the recent budget?
So not aware of the exact figure right now.
ये तो बजट आया है?
Yes, sir.
उसके मेट्रो 1 and 2 है.
Yes, sir.
वो आपने बजट नहीं देखा?
I have, sir, I read prominently a fact that the percentage is sure to come down because of the COVID impact on the economy, but not sure of the exact figures. I'm sorry.
The market has slumped, GDP has slumped almost to -6%.
Yes, sir, it says -6.3. Yes,
Mm.
that is what I've read about it. That's the contraction because of the COVID
So
impact.
do you think it is only because of COVID that the Himachal economy has came down? Or is there any other factors also?
So largely due to COVID, because the state being a state which generates its revenue prominently from areas of tourism. So the tourism sector has had a huge impact because of COVID throughout the globe, including in Himachal. So being a tourism generating economy, so it has COVID is a major factor behind the Islam.
ओके, तो ट्रैवलिंग का भी शौक रखते हैं आप?
Yes.
कहाँ पे ट्रैवल करते हैं? कैसा ट्रैवलिंग का पसंद करते हैं? अकेले जाना, ग्रुप्स में जाना, फैमिली के साथ जाना? हाउ यू लव टू ट्रैवल?
Yeah, so it's with my family. Yes.
फ्रेंड्स के साथ जाना पसंद नहीं है?
Friends, yes, friends also, but I have kept this tradition of traveling with family and getting married soon, so it will be continuing.
Right.
Yes.
कहाँ कहाँ पे ट्रैवल किया?
So before the pandemic started, I had gone to UAE. So before that, I had visited Nepal. I had also visited Calcutta. And so after the pandemic is gone, after I give my exams and got free, so I happened to visit some of my nearby locations like the heritage village of Pragpur. Recently I had gone there. So these are some of the areas I had visited in the recent past.
ठीक है. Okay, you might be aware about Sansarchan, the most famous king of Himachal Pradesh.
Yes.
Sansarchan has in most of the enmity with the neighboring state, just like he attacked the king of Mandi, even he kept him in his prison also. उसके बाद के सभी के साथ रहा. What was the reason कि Sansarchan was having an enmity or this kind of relationship with the neighboring state?
So the very prominent reason was to have dominance over the hill states. And so it's famously said that whoever controls the Kangla region controls historically the Himachal area. Historically, so not right now. So that was the intent with which he was actually trying to fight battles with the neighboring states, so that he can take over and over those states and ensure that he has dominance over all the other states and eventually over the Himachal area.
तो संसारचंद ने जो नीचे का प्लेन एरिया था उसको छोड़ के ऊपर हिली रीजन को क्यों चूज किया? जबकि प्लेन रीजन वाज मोर फर्टाइल, इकोनॉमिकली इट वाज मोस्ट प्रॉस्पेरियस और वहाँ पे जो था वो एरिया भी बहुत बड़ा था. तो व्हाई ही कुड नॉट गो फॉर द प्लेन एरिया?
Sir, Sansarchan had made a couple of attempts in annexing the plain areas, but there was a superior force in the form of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So he had provided all the resistance which he could not actually resist Sansarchan, and that is why he restricted himself in the areas of the state.
Alright. Could you name an important treaty that Maharaja Ranjit Singh made with Sansarchan?
So it was in 1809, but I am not recollecting the names, I'm sorry.
By which the Maharaja Ranjit Singh got the Kangra and all this reason?
Yes, sir.
And why so?
So,
Why this treaty was made by Sansarchan?
sir, because he wanted to resist the Gurkha invasion into the hill states. So he sought help of Maharaja Ranjit Singh for that.
How would the Gurkha involve into this hilly battles? Why?
So the Gurkha involvement is basically owing to the fact that they had become a superior force in the Nepal region. which is in proximity, which is a part of the Himalayan belt and in proximity to states like Uttarakhand and Himachal. So, sir, having conquered Nepal, they started shifting towards south, that means towards the Indian area of Himalayas, which is Uttarakhand, and then towards Himalayas. So that is how they started their victorious run towards these states.
Right. You might be aware about the South Sea China issue.
Yes.
China is playing a very assertive role.
Yes.
And India has refused to join RCEP. RCEP,
Yes.
Regional Comprehensive Agreement,
Yes.
India.
Yes.
How you see it? Do you think India should sign the RCEP? Because by not signing the RCEP, India कहीं ना कहीं एशियान से अलग हो गया.
So, in my opinion, that joining RCEP is important for the Indian economy as a whole because it helps us get connected to the global value chains and as well as the regional value chains of ASEAN. So, which is an important characteristic for a country which wants to jump from the middle income trap to the higher income levels, and for that purpose, sir, the export-oriented economy is required. So, in my opinion, sir, joining RCEP is an important consideration. At the same time, sir, the factor behind Government of India decision to not join RCEP is based on the considerations of its impact on agriculture and dairy processing sectors of India. So, sir, what should rather be done be that for these specific sectors where Government of India has some concerns, there should be some mechanisms which ensure that these sectors are not being impacted much because of the deal. But sir, overall in entirety, the deal is very important for the country.
Right. College president भी रह चुके हैं.
Yes.
So you have very good interest in politics.
Not really, sir. Not politics. The position was as good as a school monitor, sir. Because I could act as an interface between the students and the faculty. That's
You
it.
mentioned here you was a college president.
Yes, sir. I was. But the position was only as good as the class monitors. I just was an interface between my faculty and the students. That's it, sir.
Once you are a part of the politics, it does not mean that what is your post is there. If you are into some profession, it means you have interest in it.
Yes, sir.
So, if you have got interest in politics, that is why you accepted the post.
Sir, not in politics, sir. I was more interested in bringing to the fore the issues which were impacting the institution at that point in time. So there was some specific issues regarding placements, regarding extracurriculars, which I thought I espoused and should take them forwards.
So, according to you, student politics is not good.
It is good, sir. It was a good platform for me to actually take up all those issues with the administration, and there were some good solutions behind it, sir. In fact, I was the one who started the college fest, and it's a continuing tradition till now, sir. So it's been helpful.
You don't think so? These colleges and universities election happens, the many students they fight among themselves, and it should all ban the use of it.
Sir, I think any kind of violence or unruly behavior is absolutely condemnable. At the same time, sir, what is more important is the following of Lindo Committee recommendations, which is very specific and which espouses the idea of student elections. It's a good process, it brings out leadership qualities in students, but it should be done within the framework of law. There should be no violence. So,
could you tell me some good recommendation of the Lindo Commission? What are the recommendation of Lindo Committee for certain election?
so one of the one which I mentioned, sir, it is that the complete shunning of the violence in campuses is required. And so I think this is the one I am aware of because this is the one which was talked about when I was the president, that we'll fight elections but we'll ensure that there is no violence at all and no fights, etc.
In which year this committee was formed?
Not able to declare the date right now. Sorry.
Mayank, as I can see from your form, you scored 76.5 in 10th, 70 plus in 12th, 69 point something in BTech, and in LLB it is 58.1 only. Why so? Why decline?
So talking specifically about LLB, so Delhi University as such is a low scoring university. So the highest at that point in time was 65 something. So I could barely manage 58%. So I worked really hard for it, and I was also preparing for civil service examination. So my time was rather divided, but I could manage to pass in all the examinations. And as such, the university gives the scoring is on the lower side. So that is the problem.
Your background is your father is an senior advocate.
Yes.
Your brother is also practicing lawyer.
Yes.
Isn't there are some external pressure for you to join this profession?
Laws?
Law.
No, so it's
Or
absolutely
your own choice.
my choice. have a proclivity towards the study
But
of
now
law.
you're diverting.
Sir, not diverting, actually trying to just widen my canvas towards public affairs. Not diverting at all. So this is, I decided to do a course correction after my BTech, which I did, and so which I'm quite satisfied about that I did a course correction. So having been in LLB and having practicing law, I thought I should widen my canvas towards public welfare, and that is why the decision to take up the civil service examinations.
What would you like to call yourself, a lawyer or an advocate?
So, an advocate.
What is the difference?
So,
When a lawyer becomes an advocate?
so advocate is a term which is actually a legal term in terms of what the Advocates Act 1961 defines. So that is why I would like to call myself as an advocate, because I am a registered practitioner under the rules and the
Once you register under the advocate, you become an advocate.
Yes.
Fine. Which was your favorite subject?
It's a constitutional law. In LLB.
Constitution.
Yes.
Why so?
So, being the grundnorm of the country, sir, it gives the idea as to what should be the framework of law within which we should enact our laws once. It gives us the idea of what are the fundamental rights. So it gives an idea of almost everything of the Indian polity, relating from interstate relations to, in fact, sir, other institutions like CAG, the Election Commission. So a very holistic document, very good document to be read, sir. So it became one of my favorite subjects.
Can you please tell some salient features of the Indian Constitution?
Yes. So the Constitution begins with the preamble, which talks about we the people. That means the sovereignty vests in the people of the country. The second, it enlists from Article 12 till Article 35. It talks about fundamental rights, so which are inspired by long revolutions of the American and the French Revolution era, and also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and International treaties. So third, it talks about directive principles of state policy, which are non-justiciable, but at the same time very important for the state for the purpose of enacting within the legal framework. So also it talks about the idea of separation of powers. Under Article 51, it is very specific on the idea of the difference between judiciary and the executive. So it's a, again, sir, it goes back to the philosophical times of Europe and the revolutions therein, wherein Montesquieu was one of the philosophers. He talked about separation of power, and our founding fathers of the Constitution had actually enacted it as part of the Constitution. So another important idea is the independence of judiciary. So fifth is it actually talks about various other institutions which also are independent. And so some good books like Messi on administrative law talk about the idea that Indian Constitution has a wider ambit of separation of power, because it is one of the few constitutions which gives separate constitutional status to bodies like Election Commission and CAG, and it is also a facet of separation of powers. So,
What is the significance of the Berubari case?
So Berubari case specifically discussed about the idea of demarcation of boundaries between India and Pakistan. So the Honorable Supreme Court had stated therein that when we are ceding a territory, there has to be a constitutional amendment for that ceding. And so to carry it further, in the Sukumar case, the Supreme Court had stated that when there is no ceding, there is no constitutional amendment required. And so if in the Sukumar case, it was actually stated that when there is redrawing of boundaries, it can be done without a constitutional amendment, as opposed to what it was taken in the Berubari case.
Any other important significance of this case?
So it had mentioned that preamble is not a part of the constitutional amendment, which was corrected by the Honorable Supreme Court in National Party State of Kerala.
Right. What is the relationship of Berubari case and Article 3 of the Constitution?
So Article 3 of the Constitution talks about redrawing of boundaries. So the Berubari case was a landmark judgment where the Supreme Court had actually interpreted the contours of Article 3. But it was in the larger context of international relations, I would say, sir, where ceding of territory between two countries was being talked about in context of Article 3 of the Constitution of India.
Where is this place called Berubari?
So, if I can take a guess, I think it's in West Bengal.
You think or you sure?
Not really sure, sir. because that was the disputed territory at that point in time.
Basically, Jalpaiguri district that was in Bengal at that time, and
It was
it was that very case.
Yes.
Our preamble mentioned the term socialism.
Yes.
You talk about it. Why we added the term socialist? What was the need of it?
It actually gives value to the already existing provisions in the constitution regarding the idea of socialism. So two very prominent provisions are Article 38 and 39, which talks about the common utilization of resources and the consideration of wealth should not be focused in few hands. So the idea is that there should be equality, economic equality, social equality, and so these terms are actually terms which get a meaning when they are part of the preamble. As when the term socialism comes in the preamble, so these, so in my opinion, sir, it's only a reiteration of what the constitution already talks about.
You don't think so? After 1990, India has opened its economy, everything has been liberalized, everything has been globalized. So the term socialist has become irrelevant because everywhere privatization is coming here. So you don't think so that we should remove the term socialist from the preamble?
So in my opinion, the 1991 economic policy was actually challenging the Honorable Supreme Court. And the court had stated that while the economy is opening up, we still remain a socialist economy because socialism in the Indian context is different from the idea of Fabian socialism, which states that the state, when it loosens up, the socialist element is gone. So that is not the Indian case or not the Indian idea behind socialism. It's a bit different, sir. It talks about equality of opportunity, social equality, economic equality, and I think, sir, even after 25 years right now of the economic reforms, and even after the next 25 years, the idea of equality will always be a very prominent part of the Indian Constitution.
Should you name that particular case where the Supreme Court has given the judgment?
Sir, it's basically some Delhi Broadcasters Union Association versus Union of India. So it had to do something with the idea of spectrum allocation, and since the economy had been liberalized, so those were the facts of the case, sir. But it had something to do with the Delhi Broadcasters Union Association versus Union of India. That was the name of the case.
Mayank, recently Parliament has passed 3 farm laws.
Yes, sir.
Agriculture basically a state subject.
Yes.
What your take on this constitutional aspect of these laws passed by the Parliament?
So, since the Honorable Supreme Court has not yet given any opinion on it, so I have a very narrow.
Constitution has never been challenged.
Yes, sir, it has not been challenged, sir. So my opinion is very narrow and very humble right now. But my humble opinion would be that these laws are constitutional. No matter while agriculture is a state subject, but I think the Union government within the ambit of Article 256, 257 in that dimension, I think, so I've read an article by a senior advocate, so I would be quoting that, in which he had talked about the constitutionality of these laws, given the overarching powers which Union government possesses. And so the idea of, and he had related the idea of federalism in terms of the idea of Indian federalism, sir, as to what is so unique about it. And so in that context, he had stated that the Indian federalism is not the ordinary federalism, it is quasi-federal. And in that dimension, sir, these laws can be enacted, and if the Supreme Court if the Supreme Court considers its interpretation, it might turn out that these are valid. Within the ambit of
Mayank,
yes, sir.
Article 256, 257, they explain about the executive relationship between center and the state.
Yes, sir.
Right, so there is nothing any relationship of that particular things to this kind of the law. It is basically list number 33, subject number 33, under which the central government put the agriculture into the business and all this category and they made this law. So how you are correlating Article 256 and 7 here?
So actually, my correlation is only to the point that 256, 257 is talking about the quasi-federal nature of the Indian Union, sir. When
What
this,
is the difference between 256 and 257?
sir, I'm not able to recollect.
Then what were the need of specific lists?
Sir, the
Once there are specific lists
Yes, sir.
which prescribe the subjects,
Yes, sir.
state, concurrent and central subjects.
Yes, sir.
Then now why to go back on these articles when we have specific fields? And where there is thin line difference between business, commerce and marketing. And how will you, when you take is that perhaps these are legality constitutional wise, and the difference between business, commerce and marketing.
Yes, sir.
What your take on that? Is when we talk about these three laws, basically this is marketing crops, not doing business and commerce.
Yes, sir.
There is, where will you like to take yourself on these 3 points?
So in my opinion, these are actually framed to ensure that there is easier marketing of the produce by the farmers. So this is
Marketing.
the intent. Yes, sir. The
Now you are
marketing.
saying marketing.
Yes, sir.
Marketing is a state subject.
Sir, I'm not
Marketing is a state subject.
right. Sir. So actually, my opinion is not only on the list. So my opinion goes beyond the list. So because the list is under Schedule 7, and Schedule 7 relates to Article 246. 246 is very categorical on the points that 246 subclause 1, which gives union the power, and 246 subclause 3, which gives state the power. So the subclause 1, which gives union the power, actually overrides subclause 3. So in that context, I am taking it to the level of interpretation wherein, while we are talking about the list, we have to keep in mind the provisions of Article 246 and the overriding power. And sir, which was exactly my point, that quasi-federal nature is this what the Constitution gives, wherein it is giving an upper hand to the Union and the Parliament to frame laws. And so if the Supreme Court decides to interpret it, I think it will be held bias of the Constitution, because 246 sub clause 3 is below 246 sub clause 1, which is the Union list under Schedule 7.
Recently, Mayank, the Himachal government has already made the law, the faith marriages and all, that you might be aware about it.
Yes.
You don't think so by making all this kind of law, our right to freedom, that is a fundamental right, somewhere it get violated? Because marriage is my personal right, it is already covered under right to life, so it is not violating my fundamental right.
So, at the very outset, it appears that yes, there is a violation of Article 21, which gives us the right of freedom of choice. But sir, if we look at the nitty-gritty of the law, it specifically talks about instances where there is forced conversions. So sir, Article 25 has been interpreted by the Supreme Court as freedom of conscience should not be forced. It should be a freedom which is from within as a part of our conscience. So sir, anything which is forced. So talking about these laws, I would also like to go to Stanley's Clause judgment of the Supreme Court, which was very categorical on the point of conversions. So way back in, I think, 1980s itself, it had talked about the idea of forced conversions and voluntary conversions, and so these laws are also talking about the same point, that forced conversions should be checked and not voluntary conversions.
Right, man. It was a nice talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Just wait for 5 minutes and
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.